In the winter of 1973, a San Francisco lawyer boarded a plane to Italy carrying ransom money for the richest family on earth. The Gettys. Oil money. The kind of money that gets your grandson kidnapped. That lawyer flew home a hero to the dynasty. And back home, his own son was growing up in two different worlds at the same time. His mother worked three jobs. She took in foster kids because the government stipend helped cover the rent. The boy delivered newspapers, bussed tables, sat in the back of the classroom with his head down, praying the teacher wouldn't call on him because the words on the page wouldn't hold still. And then, on the weekends, his father, the judge who managed the Getty Family Trust, would pull him into a world of estates and private fortunes most Americans will never even see photographs of. That boy grew up. He built wineries and restaurants. He became mayor of San Francisco, then governor of California. Who am I talking about? Gavin Newsom. And 53 years after that plane took off, he sat down on a stage in Atlanta to sell a book about that childhood, and in 47 seconds said something that more than 40 million people have now watched. But here's what almost nobody covering this story is telling you. Buried inside those 47 seconds is one number, and it's not the number he said out loud, that exposes what this entire tour actually is. Because the man on that stage isn't just selling a book, he's term limited, he's auditioning for 2028, and he might be on your ballot. So let's go to Sunday night, February 22nd. The Rialto Center for the Arts, downtown Atlanta. Tickets ran $45 to $100 a seat. Earlier that same day, Newsom had endorsed Keisha Lance Bottoms for governor of Georgia. So this wasn't some quiet author reading. This was a political stop with a book attached. Moderating the conversation, Atlanta's mayor, Andre Dickens. Remember that name? Because the man sitting 3 feet away from Newsom is the detail that makes this whole clip land the way it did. Dickens asked Newsom what he hoped readers would take from the memoir, and Newsom leaned in. I'm not trying to impress you, I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. He kept going. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. Literally a 960 SAT guy. You've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in. Now, to be fair, there's real context here. Newsom has dyslexia. He's talked about it for years. He told the crowd he hasn't overcome it. He's living with it. That part is genuine. But context doesn't choose how 47 seconds plays on a phone screen. A conservative account called End Wokeness clipped it, posted it, and within roughly 24 hours, it had been viewed more than 20 million times. 20 million in a day. And here's the part about the man 3 feet away. Andre Dickens holds a chemical engineering degree from Georgia Tech, a master's in public administration. He was the first person in his family to go to college, the first Black Georgia Tech alumnus ever elected mayor of Atlanta, and was named Georgian of the Year in 2025. That is the man Gavin Newsom looked at and said, I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. But while the internet was laughing at one number, the number everyone was mocking wasn't actually the problem. The real problem was a different number, one that's been sitting in a federal database since before most of that audience was born. And nobody had checked it yet. Because by Monday morning, Newsom had a much more immediate crisis. The people coming after him weren't the people he expected. The Monday backlash didn't follow the usual script. Yes, the right hit hard. Senator Tim Scott put out a statement that read like a verdict. Black Americans aren't your low bar. We've built empires, created movements, outworked, outhustled, and outsmarted people like you. Stop using your mediocre academics as a way to patronize communities. Corin Rankin, the chairwoman of the California Republican Party, Newsom's home state, said, I think he just tanked himself yesterday, and predicted it would haunt every career he thinks he's going to have. Now Newsom's side fought back, and honesty requires showing you their case. Mayor Dickens himself defended him, saying the conversation was about academic struggles and wasn't an attack on anyone. Newsom's office called the whole thing MAGA manufactured outrage, pointing out he's discussed his dyslexia and test scores publicly for years. And fact checkers noted something true. He never mentioned race, not once. So is that the end of it? An awkward moment blown up by his enemies? Here's why that defense doesn't close the case. This wasn't a private confession to a friend. This was a ticketed event, up to $100 a seat, on a multi-state tour that reporters across the spectrum have described as a 2028 presidential campaign with a book attached 2 days before that book hit shelves, which raises the question almost nobody asked. Why did he write this book at all? His own pages answer it. Newsom writes that his entry into the Getty world threatened to, his words, rob him of his own hard-earned story. He calls that theft one of the very reasons for writing the book. Think about what that means. The entire project exists to prove the relatability is real. The Atlanta stage was the sales floor for that exact claim. And the number that undercuts the claim? It's in federal education statistics, published decades ago, hiding in plain sight. We're almost there. But first, you need to see what Newsom did Monday night, because a bad clip is survivable. Politicians outlive gaffes all the time. What turns a gaffe into a meltdown is the response, and he put his in writing. Monday night, February 23rd. With the clip past 30 million views and climbing, Gavin Newsom, sitting governor of the largest state in America, presumed frontrunner for his party's nomination, logged on and posted a public message at Sean Hannity. Spare me your fake fucking outrage. Profanity included, fully spelled out from his official account. The man whose entire brand that week was disciplined vulnerability chose rage in writing, where it can never be deleted from a screenshot. So did the counterattack work? Hold that question, because his own office went further. According to reporting on the fallout, when a veteran investigative reporter, a woman who had written an entire book about Newsom, asked his office for records supporting the governor's account of his dyslexia, his spokesman's emailed response was two words. The second word was off. A sitting governor's office, telling a credentialed journalist asking a basic verification question to get lost. In the same week, the governor's team was insisting the outrage was manufactured. The reaction came fast, and not just from the left's usual critics. Steve Forbes, hardly a man given to viral theatrics, issued a public warning. If you claim the moral high ground, act like it. Democrats can't condemn Donald Trump's tone while copying his tactics. Trading insults and revenge only deepens the rot in our politics. Governor Newsom, lead differently. And on Tuesday, the very next morning, Young Man in a Hurry officially published. The memoir engineered to introduce a softer, humbler, more relatable Gavin Newsom arrived in bookstores, while its author was cursing at cable hosts and his staff was cursing at reporters. So did the counterattack work? Here's your answer. The view count didn't stall. It climbed, past 35 million, past 40. Every swing he took fed the algorithm another day of life. He wasn't burying the clip. He was promoting it. But the most brutal verdict of the week didn't come from Hannity, didn't come from Fox, didn't come from a single Republican. It came from inside his own party. And not from some cautious centrist either. From the populist left he needs most. Which brings us to the part his team really did not want getting traction. Her name is Nina Turner, former Democratic state senator from Ohio, national co-chair of Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, one of the most prominent progressive voices in the country, the wing of the party any Democratic nominee needs energized in 2028. Here is what she said. Governor Gavin Newsom went to Atlanta and told a crowd that he is just like them. He had a 960 SAT, that he can't read speeches. How insulting. Working class people believe politicians are out of touch because they worry about the cost of rent or medical bills. Read that again. She didn't call it racist. She called it something arguably worse for a presidential hopeful. Out of touch. Fake relatability. The exact charge his entire book was written to disprove. And she wasn't alone. Democratic strategist Ameshia Cross said she was disappointed, telling the Griot, he's a great wordsmith. So I was kind of bothered by the way that he said it. Now step back and look at what this week actually was. A relatability performance delivered to a man with a Georgia Tech engineering degree and a room that paid up to $100 to be there. A defense that said context, while the context, a campaign-style tour selling a memoir about his hard-earned story, made it worse. A response of public profanity and a two-word email to a reporter asking for basic verification. And then his own party's populist wing saying out loud what the clip made 40 million people feel. The book was written, by his own admission, to stop the Getty fortune from robbing him of his story. Instead, the tour built to prove that story produced the single most watched piece of evidence against it, and they knew the stakes the whole time. That's why the tour exists, why the Vogue profile ran, why the endorsement came the same day. This was never accidental exposure. This was the launch. One last thing before we close the loop. The proof of what this week really was isn't anyone's opinion. Not Turner's, not Scott's, not mine. It's the number I told you about at the very beginning, the one he didn't say out loud, and it's been public for 40 years. Here it is. According to data from the National Center for Education Statistics, in the 1980s, the era Gavin Newsom took the test, the average SAT score in America was roughly 900. 900. Today's recentered scale averages around 1,010, but back then, the typical American teenager scored below the number Newsom has spent this entire tour offering up as proof of his struggle. A 960 wasn't the floor. It was above average for his generation. So the confession at the center of the most watched clip of his career, I'm a 960 SAT guy, delivered like an admission against interest, was, by the federal government's own numbers, a better than average score dressed up as humility. Even the vulnerability was calibrated. That's the pattern, and now you can name it. Manufactured relatability, the performance in Atlanta, the $100 tickets, the memoir written, his words, to keep the Getty world from robbing him of his own hard earned story. The profanity when the performance got fact checked by 40 million strangers, and his own party's populist wing calling it what it was. None of those are isolated moments. They're one story. You now know more about what happened this week than most people who watched it covered on cable news because they showed you the clip and almost none of them showed you the number. Remember where this story started? 1973, a lawyer on a plane to Italy carrying ransom money for the richest family on earth. 53 years later, his son looked at a paying crowd and said, I'm like you. The number says otherwise. It always did. If you want the next breakdown the moment it drops, hit subscribe and turn the bell on. Patterns like this don't stop, and neither do we. And drop a comment below. What was the moment in this video where it clicked for you? Stay informed, stay sharp, and never take the performance at face value.